Welcome to Michael Bart's F1, everything Formula 1, but from photographer's point of view. Round 7, the race with the longest title, the Formula 1 MSC Cruisers Grand Prix made in Italy, Emilia Romagna 2024. It has been 30 years since the fateful 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, held here in Imola, where tragically Roland Ratzenberger and Senna passed away. The F1 paddock took this moment to celebrate both drivers. Sebastian Vettel led the current Formula 1 drivers and team personnel and the whole Formula 1 family on a run from the start-finish straight to the Senna Memorial to pay tribute to the Brazilian legend, before heading off to turn 6 to honour Roland Ratzenberger. It was amazing to see so many people participating in this rather unique memorial service. As we ran down to Tamburello, the heavens opened and there was a massive downpour. I got completely soaked as I was photographing the drivers paying tribute to Senna. There was sadly a little bit of controversy at the memorial event. Both Max and Bottas had their unique Senna shirts stolen before the gathering. As you can see, the drivers' shirts had their unique race numbers on their sleeves. I think Alex's shirt might have also been stolen because he was wearing one of the generic shirts that they were giving out before the event started. Max did honour Senna in his own unique way by equaling the Brazilian's record of 8 pole positions in a row. This is quite a remarkable achievement, and something that only these two great drivers have managed to achieve in their careers. During the race weekend, Gasly ran with a Senna tribute helmet, and this was incredibly beautiful. Senna is one of Gasly's heroes, and although he was only born 2 years after Senna passed away, he grew up listening to the tales of fellow countryman Alain Prost's epic battles with the Brazilian Ayrton Senna. Charles Leclerc also had a custom helmet for the weekend. His had an Italian flag down the middle, honouring the region as the birthplace of Ferrari. George Russell drove a 100-year-old Mercedes around the track. We've come on quite a journey from when that car was made in 1924 to what Mercedes cars look like now. It was rather special seeing them side by side. George was wearing a replica race suit from 1920, complete with a leather helmet and goggles. This classic car is actually quite remarkable. It was worked on by both Paul Daimler and Ferdinand Porsche, and it's famous for winning the 1924 Targa Florio race. I have found some archive photographs of this car in that race, here being driven by Christian Werner. There was quite a lot of buzz around the paddock because all the teams, apart from one, brought substantial upgrades. Ferrari probably stole the headlines as they had some extensive changes. This included updates to the front wing, the rear wing, the side pod inlets, the engine cover, the floor edge, the diffuser, and the rear suspension, so pretty much the entire car. The one team that didn't bring any upgrades were Racing Bulls, and when Yuki Tsunoda was third in FP2, you really had to wonder if all the team's upgrades were working as expected. It is complex bringing this amount of changes to the cars. You have to take into account track-specific characteristics, such as the high curbs at Imola. Leclerc says this makes it much harder to see the full effect of these changes. Teams also need time to fully understand the effects of the upgrades, and how best to change the setup of the cars in different conditions. All through the weekend, Ferrari looked like the team to beat, but then the wind changed on Saturday, and they were unable to adjust the car to these new conditions as well as Red Bull and McLaren had. It's not a massive surprise that McLaren did so well. They brought most of their upgrades to the previous race, so the team had a little bit of extra time to understand how the car behaves on track and in different conditions. Aston Martin actually appeared to have made their car worse with their upgrades, with Alonso crashing in practice and both cars failing to make it into the final phase of qualifying. Things didn't look good over at Aston. But we probably have to give them a few weeks, say after Montreal, before we fully assess how effective these upgrades have been for the team. This weekend just highlights the complexity of these cars and how so many factors go into making them work perfectly. From the right ambient conditions to the perfect tyre, to a helpful tow to get the perfect time in qualifying. Apart from upgrades, there was a lot of speculation about what is happening in the driver market. We've just learned that Alex Albon has signed a long-term deal with Williams. I did find the timing of this to be a little bit odd. Alex already has a contract with Williams for 2025, and there are many top teams that have expressed an interest in his services. I didn't think that there was a need for him to rush to sign a contract extension, and maybe he could have just waited to see if any interesting seats became available. Williams, aware of this, must have offered him a very lucrative deal, and it's actually a deal that works well for both team and driver. Alex is driving brilliantly at Williams, and it gives the Grove-based team a bit of security knowing they have a top driver secured for the next few years. And on the other side of the garage, it was good news for Logan Sargent. He hasn't yet been replaced by Mercedes junior Kimi Antonelli. The bad news for Logan is that he didn't use this opportunity to further his case for a drive next year. He was 20th in qualifying, having had both his fastest laps deleted for exceeding track limits, and he only managed to make it to P18 in the race. One driver that could potentially replace Logan is Valtteri Bottas. It's looking increasingly unlikely that he's going to have a drive at Sauber next year, and he was seen going into the Williams garage. Apparently, he claims he had run out of coffee. This is a man who owns his own coffee brand, and he went looking for coffee at Williams, where the team principal is rather particular about his coffee intake. Have a look at the latest season of Drive to Survive if you want to know more about that. Anyway, the whole explanation sounds a little fishy to me. This was the first race back in Europe of the 2024 season, and the paddock was a lot fuller, with a lot of European-based photographers coming to a race for the first time this year. It was really good to be back in Imola. Everyone missed the race last year, and the weather, apart from Thursday, was spectacular. It was also good to be back to a conventional race weekend, because no matter how much fun the sprint weekends are, they are a lot of extra work for those of us behind the scenes. Having two of them back to back was a lot of hard work. And it was also good to return to an old school racetrack, and specifically this one, which looks absolutely gorgeous. There are so many beautiful views where you can see the cars winding through the trees, and here where you can see the beautiful Basilica San Cassiano in the background. There are a number of private houses overlooking the track where residents are watching the race from. Here you can even see one where all the residents are sat on the roof. Every possible vantage point at this track is used by fans in some of the most creative ways, and it's wonderful to see. We did see a huge amount of Ferrari fans, or Tifosi as they're known. They were in full voice the whole weekend. After the race, the pit straight was a sea of red, as everyone was there trying to catch a glimpse of the podium celebration. I was fortunate enough to experience Michael Schumacher winning here in 2006 in a Ferrari, and there's nothing quite like watching a Ferrari win in Italy. Those days of Ferrari dominance might have taken one step closer to returning. There is increased paddock gossip that Adrian Newey will be part of the Scuderia. Nothing official yet, but it's sounding increasingly likely. Elsewhere, Ollie Behrman got a run in FP1 for Haas. He did really well with a P15, and he's not the only driver to race a Formula 1 car here for the first time. Oscar Piastri, Logan Sargent, and surprisingly, Nico Hülkenberg all made their debuts. Hülkenberg's been driving in Formula 1 for years, but he's never been in a car for an Imola race weekend. Still, he managed to get P10 in qualifying, and he's taking that Haas to places where it really has no right to go. They have made several changes to the track layout, increasing the amount of gravel traps around this narrow circuit. This increases the jeopardy of drivers exceeding track limits. I did see both Max and Lewis going into the gravel trap at Acqua Minerale, and Checo had a really big off at Variante Alta during FP3. I got this shot of him in the air, all the wheels just about off the ground. There is a massive curb on the corner of the chicane which launches the cars into the air. Perez was hitting this curb very aggressively throughout the session, and in several of the previous laps, he got rather airborne. All the drivers get a bit aerial here, but Perez was probably the most aggressive in this session. The crash did unravel his weekend a bit because the car needed a considerable rebuild. He did manage P11 in qualifying, and then he fought back to 8th place in the race. However, with both Racing Bulls drivers having rather good weekends, the pressure on that second seat is only going to increase. Back in the paddock, Lewis was amazingly dressed as well. My favourite outfit was this one that he wore on Sunday by Californian designer Rick Owens. This is from his SS22 men's collection. Lewis is also wearing Gucci sunglasses and Timberland boots. The Italian fans are already warming to their soon-to-be Ferrari man, constantly cheering him from the grandstands as he drove past, and apparently he's learning Italian. He did greet us with a hearty buongiorno on Thursday morning. Charles Leclerc has a new puppy called Leo who made his first appearance in the paddock. There is some debate as to what breed he is. Can anyone identify him? My guess is Golden Retriever, but I've got it on good authority that he's a sausage dog, so please do let me know in the comments below. Hugh Grant was on the grid with his partner Anna Elisabeth Eberstein. It was great to see the British actor. He has been to a few Formula One races in the past, but I've never had a chance to photograph him until now. I picked a slightly off-centre position for my start shot. Here you see the cars just as they pull away. I quite liked it because there was an opportunity to photograph the cars getting ready for the start of the race. So the teams and mechanics setting the cars up, taking the tyre blankets off, and then seeing the cars pull away with all the smoke in the background coming from the Ravazza corner. This was a race where Ferrari promised so much during the practice sessions, but it was Red Bull that mostly held their nerves to claim pole position and win the race. A race that was largely processional. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you see that this wasn't just another standard issue Max Verstappen victory. For example, George Russell claimed fastest lap for Mercedes, and Ferrari with the right wind and the right tyres genuinely look fast. And while Max did win, had there been a few more laps, a charging Lando Norris might have forced a different outcome. Both McLarens could have started from the front row of the grid. So Formula One is getting closer. The pressure on Red Bull is increasing. You can start to hear the whispers that 2024 is starting to be a competitive season after all. Thank you so much for joining me for this look back at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. I really hope you've enjoyed it. What do you think of the race? Please do let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't yet, please do like and subscribe. Next, we're off to Monaco. And this is a particularly special one for me because it was 20 years ago where I watched my first Monaco Grand Prix, so I'm going to go back to where it all began. Please do join me for that, and until Monaco, goodbye.